Finally, the season 2 recap is here. If you haven't seen my season 1 recap, I highly recommend you watch that video first so you know what's going on. So season 2 begins as everyone is returning for the new school year. At the start of term, Mick and Mara are dating, and so are Fabian and Nina. Joy is also back and she has a crush on Fabian. They also find Rufus's obituary in the paper, so now they believe that he is dead.
Guess he found out he wasn't immortal the hard way.
Menace of the Century, Victor, is still hard at work. He is looking for something called the Book of Isis because he believes it contains the recipe for the elixir. He thinks this is part of something called the Treasures of Egypt exhibition, which he would like to host at the school so that he can get his hands on the Book of Isis. He finds a doll which has a clue
hidden in this book of old, water of life and tears of gold.
And he realizes that tears of gold is the missing ingredient that he needs for his elixir. In the middle of the night, a creepy spirit comes to visit Nina. We're going to call her Sankara because that's her name, and she non-consensually touches Nina, who, by the way, is a minor, and leaves the mark of Anubis, which is a curse. And she tells Nina she has to find the mask of Anubis or forfeit her life.
At least it's not like you're gonna die or anything.
Amber! That's what forfeit our lives means.
So whilst they are doing their research, they find out that there is a replica of the mask of Anubis in the exhibit, and the legend states the mask weeps tears of gold. Nina's gran visits, and she suggests Fabian write Nina a poem because he's got absolutely no game.
The quest was long and difficult.
Mick tells Mara his family is moving to Australia, but he wants to stay to be with her. Mara feels guilty and tells him to go. She's so preoccupied with Mick that she actually misses her speech at the bid, so Joy has to step in and do Mara's speech. Jerome finds Fabian's poem and puts it on Joy's clipboard. This man is always causing problems.
I don't want peace. I want problems, always.
She sees Fabian's poem and thinks it's for her because she is delusional. They win the bid and Mr. Sweet hires Fabian's godfather Jasper to be the curator. Trudy, the housekeeper, is leaving to assist Jasper, and there's a new housekeeper called Vera. She has a stuffed dog, one thing in common, and suddenly Victor just falls in love with her. He's just like me, for real. Jerome's little sister Poppy finds a letter from their dad who left when she was very young. Poppy wants to find her dad, so Jerome hires a private investigator to look for him. The PI comes back with a bag of garbage that he pulled out of a dumpster, in which Jerome finds a letter from his dad. He learns that his father is in prison and goes to visit him. Jerome's dad apologizes. He also asks for a favor. He tells him he stole the Frobisher gem from the Frobisher shield, and he wants Jerome to find the gem and put it back. The gem is hidden inside a suit of armor in Mr. Sweet's office. So Jerome asks Alfie to distract Mr. Sweet, like send him on a wild goose chase, for lack of better phrase. So of course Alfie brings in a literal wild goose. The goose ends up eating the gem. So Alfie wants to date Amber, but Amber does not want to date Alfie. He is trying to win her over, and he surprises her with a dollhouse, and Amber begrudgingly agrees to date him. The dollhouse starts doing some wacky things, gives them a map of a tunnel system underneath the house, which is supposedly going to lead them to the Mask of Anubis. So Amber, Fabian and Nina go into the cellar and find Robert's secret office, where they find some amulets. Amber finds a hidden door behind the bookcase, but Mr. Frobisher Smythe booby-trapped it. They realize that the amulets protect them from the booby traps. On the other side of the bookcase, they find a series of puzzles which they have to complete to progress through the tunnel system. So they decide it's time to get the gang back together. The Sabunas all get an amulet, and they have a spare which they keep in the dollhouse. Vera and Victor see them on their way out of the cellar, so now they know about Frobisher's secret study. Vera finds the Book of Isis. They search the kids' rooms and find the map of the tunnel system and a spare amulet in the dollhouse. However, Vera is only pretending to be working with Victor. We find out that she's actually working for someone who only goes by the collector. So Nina and Fabian decide to break up because their relationship is getting in the way of their friendship. A new boy called Eddie arrives and almost immediately gets into beef with Patricia. To celebrate the opening of the exhibit, they throw a masquerade ball, and everyone's favourite girl boss decides to make some quick cash by selling dresses to Joy and Nina. What he doesn't tell them is that the dresses are identical. Fabian kisses Joy, thinking it's Nina because she's wearing the same dress, and Joy is absolutely delusional and thinks that Fabian is in love with her because of that musty, dusty, crusty poem.
Well, it's a haiku.
Meanwhile, Alfie and Jerome make a bet with Eddie to see if he can get Patricia to dance with him, and we see maybe Patricia doesn't hate him as much as she says she does, until the next morning when she finds out about the bet. Alfie is starting to realize that dating Amber is a little too high maintenance for him, so he tells her that he wants to break up. But Amber says no, so the goose has a bowel movement and Jerome gets the gem back. He goes to put the gem back in the shield, but the shield is not there. The school haven't won it in 30 years, so he decides to compete to win it back. During the ping pong match, they end up winning the shield back. Jerome finally returns the gem to its rightful place in the shield. Vera and Trudy have a bake-off, but one of the teachers, Mrs. Andrews, finds the receipt, which proves that Vera cheated. She starts growing suspicious of Vera, so she asks Mara to investigate her for an article on the school news site. Mara writes an article to expose Vera, and Eddie encourages her to publish it without Mr. Sweet's approval. At first, she gets expelled for slander, but Eddie admits that he was the one who convinced her to publish the article, so her expulsion gets revoked, but she is now banned from writing for the school paper ever again. Patricia overhears Eddie talking to Mr. Sweet and finds out that Mr. Sweet is actually Eddie's father. She agrees to keep it a secret as it will ruin his bad boy reputation. Eddie admits to Patricia that he likes her and she kisses him and agrees to go on a date with him. A new teacher called Miss Valentine arrives. She taught Mick in Australia and tells Mara that Mick said he can't wait to introduce his new girl from Australia. Mara gets jealous, so she pretends to date Jerome and post pictures to make Mick jealous.
I have the mind of a mastermind. What's that? I don't know, but I'm so creative like that.
Jerome is having the time of his life and uses it as an excuse to kiss Mara, not once, but twice. Much to Jerome's despair, Mick's message actually said he can't wait to introduce his girl to Australia. There is no Australian girlfriend. To complete the next task, they must play the Song of Hathor on the horns. They realize that they are missing another instrument, an ox bell, which is conveniently in the exhibit. Vera steals the ox bell, the gang find it and they do the challenge. Patricia takes the ox bell so she can return it to the library, but before she can do that, Vera tips off Sweet that one of the Anubis kids have stolen the ox bell. They do a bag search, but they don't find the bell in Patricia's bag because Patricia's twin sister, Piper, has run away from music school, so they have to keep it a secret, and Piper pretends to be Patricia for a while, and Vera dragged her in the hall thinking she was Patricia. The ox bell gets returned, but Trudy notices that the chain from the bell is missing and she finds it in Vera's room. Vera catches her snooping and then she kidnaps Trudy and she is then held captive by the collector. Jerome finds a note from Trudy explaining that she will be gone for a while, but he realizes that something must be wrong when he sees that the first letter of each line spells out, "Help me."
That's suspicious.
Eddie and Patricia go on their date, which goes well, but Eddie is concerned that Patricia didn't kiss him at the end. He decides that next time he sees her, he's gonna hit her with a big old smackaroo. His words, not mine. He ends up seeing Piper, thinking it's Patricia, and kisses her. Mr. Sweet invites Eddie and Patricia to dinner so he can get to know Eddie's new lady friend a little better. Patricia asks Piper to go in her place because Mr. Sweet will find her more impressive. In the end, Mr. Sweet and Eddie find out about the twin thing, and before Piper leaves, she gives Patricia her necklace. Eddie sees the necklace, thinking it's Piper, and mentions the time he and Piper kissed.
Congratulations. You played yourself.
Jasper is in cahoots with Vera. He steals the gem from the shield to give it to the collector. Jerome confronts him about the gem and Trudy going missing. Jasper says the only way to get them back is to offer something that the collector wants even more. He mentions that the collector likes Frobisher heirlooms. Jerome notices the dollhouse used to belong to Sarah Frobisher Smythe. He goes with Jasper to give it to the collector in exchange for Trudy. The collector takes the dollhouse but does not release Trudy. In a fit of rage, Jasper unmasks the collector and we see that it's Rufus. Patricia tells Eddie that she's upset about the kiss with Piper. She accidentally sits on a button which broadcasts their conversation to the whole school and lets it slip that Eddie is Mr. Sweet's son. To get back at her, Eddie tries to make her jealous and he and Mara go ghost hunting. They set up a bunch of cameras around the house, one of which captures Jerome stealing the dollhouse. The Sabunas confront him and he tells them about Vera working for the collector and how the collector is actually Rufus. They ask Jasper for help and he distracts Rufus by giving him the replica of the mask while the kids bust Trudy out. Meanwhile, this maniac tries to do a ritual with the mask so he can, let me check my notes, enter the afterlife and become a god. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work because the mask is fake. So there's this new anonymous blog on the school website that everyone is obsessed with. The writer uses the pseudonym Jack Jackal. I wonder who would need a fake name to write for the school paper. Jack Jackal publishes an article roasting Nina, but Jack, didn't write it, Joy did. Everyone figures out that Joy wrote the article on Nina and assume that she is Jack Jackal. Mara writes a father-son piece about Eddie and Jerome's relationship with their dads, but Joy takes credit for it. Jerome and Eddie work out that Mara is actually Jack. They go to Mr. Sweet and get her ban lifted so she can write under her own name again. In the tunnels, the last puzzle is what looks like a giant chessboard. The Sabunas learn the rules of Senate so they can cross the board and get to the mask, but they mess up and Nina gets eliminated and trapped in a cell. The ghost of Victor's dad is down there and he tells her that she is the Paragon and that her protector, the Osirian, is nearby to save her. He also says he's sorry for not being a better father to Victor and gives her his ring. They realize that they need help and Victor is the greatest Senate player that they know, but Victor also messes up the game and Alfie gets eliminated. Victor feels guilty and refuses to continue the game. Fabian asks Joy for help as she's a chess master, so is better at strategizing their moves. She tries to take them across the board, but the gang don't trust her, so they don't do the moves that she tells them to, which causes Patricia and Amber to also be eliminated. Fabian is the only player left, and Joy manages to complete the game. They are given a choice between two keys, one which unlocks the mask and the other which frees their friends. They choose to free their friends. Jerome gets kidnapped by Rufus. He tells Eddie that he's going to stay with his uncle. While he's trapped in the barn, he finds a safe in which he finds the gem. Eddie tells the Sabunas that Jerome has gone to stay with his uncle. He describes the man that Jerome left with and they realize it was Rufus. Alfie and Patricia go to bust him out, but instead of Jerome, Eddie is in the barn. He was following them and then Rufus locked him in there. The rest of Sabuna look for alternative ways to get to the mask. They find a spare key in the library.
Deus Ex Machina.
Nina puts on the mask but nothing happens because it's not the real mask, it's the final clue. The real mask is actually the one on display in the exhibit, hidden in plain sight. You may be wondering why it didn't work for Rufus. Well, that is because it was missing the gem, the Frobisher gem. So Rufus appears with Jerome, and Jerome does not have the gem because he gave it to Eddie in the barn. Eddie hears voices guiding him to the library. Eddie is actually the Osirian, Nina's protector. He gives her the gem but warns her not to put on the mask because Sankara wants to possess her body to enter the underworld. Nina puts it on anyway, and surprise, surprise, Sankara possesses her body to enter the underworld. Eddie uses his Osirian power to banish Sankara and Rufus gets hold of the mask. He does the ritual and then dies for real this time because only the pure of heart can enter the underworld and become a god. In all the panic and pandemonium, Joy gets hit by a bolt of lightning and is dying, so they use the tears of gold from the mask to save her. Jerome finally asks Mara out and she says yes, Fabian and Nina get back together, and so do Alfie and Amber. Nina gives Victor his father's ring. Then we find out at the very end that the ring contains tears of gold. The end. Season 2 is probably my favourite season. It has all the best characters and so many juicy plot points. Season 3 on the other hand, let's not talk about that. But yeah, I'll see you later. Bye!